cost. Obviously, there's a method to the madness. But yeah, that's like pretty simple things. FX usually like I'm not always printing FX while I'm recording the beds. Like if I want like a lexicon on something or a plate on something, I'll do it later in the mix. Maybe just use a plugin on the record. But if you want to, it's easy enough to like set up a channel and send it through that. We'll go over like more so like mixing stuff and actually sending stuff out of Gear and then back into Pro Tools later. But yeah, that's pretty much that. You guys, questions? I'm gonna move on to
Sorry. So you said when you were recording guitar, you said you were muting the DI track. Do you still record on it?
Yeah. So I'll record it, but I just won't listen to it.
And when you reamp, do you reamp like the amp sound or the
DI?
Okay.
Yeah. Reamping is kind of like a weird thing. Like it's kind of hard to get right. Like I find those like reamp boxes and stuff. Like it doesn't always sound exactly like what you want it to sound, but you can always reamp stuff if you chose the wrong amp to record on the day of. And there's also like so many virtual reamp things like that you can use nowadays. Like which were some good ones? Like I know. There's like S-Gear, there's like Guitar Rig, there's the whole recording long thing, the
Neural
Universal
DSP.
Audio,
Universal has a really good
Neural
one.
DSP, all sorts of things. Like if you're just recording at home with a DI, you can get like a great sound. But I used to like swear by those things because I was lazy. But like when you get into like recording an actual amp and like figuring out mic placement, like off axis or on axis, like even with just like an SM57, like it's night and day, like how much better it sounds.
And I found when
157 on that Marshall stack out there will blow your world.
Yeah, it'll
Really?
kick any like fake plug-in thing's ass, like 100%. Unless you're going for like a clean like Nile Rodgers sort of like DI Daft Punk sound or something like that. Yeah. Know your shit. Like there's so much out there on like Sound on Sound or like on Gear. What's the thing? Gear Hose or
Gear Sluts, yeah.
Oh yeah, Gear Sluts or whatever. They changed the name.
Yeah.
Is it Gearheads or something?
Gearheads or something, like all these forums of people being like, I found fucking Bruce Swindon's like chain on Thriller, man. This is what it is. And it's like that is actually it. And like with UAD and stuff, you can get so far, just like looking online and like sort of copying settings and stuff, and that's how you learn. Like you just kind of steal and borrow from other people and experiment when you have 3 days in the studio.
But also, I find when you're tracking with an amp, it affects your performance while you're playing guitar. Like if you're just sitting, exactly. When you're sitting at a computer, exactly, totally.
Yeah.
So it's like,
if you're making a rock record, like rock, it's all about like the live show, like the energy, that feeling of like being in the room with everything just blasting in your face.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to really be able to feel it, like that. It is like the good thing about putting the cab in there and the head in here is like you can really crank it, and which you'll probably still feel it a little bit through the walls, but in that way you can get like the really good high voltage breaking like natural dirty tone that you can get in these tube amps. But you want to be able to feel it, and it's like your performance is entirely dictated by how comfortable you are and how confident you are in that moment. And if you know you sound good and you can hear yourself sound good and you can feel yourself sound good, you're gonna play like fucking hell. You're gonna absolutely shred that thing because you feel like the world's on your back and you got that. So,
I think the feedback's a big part of it. Like when you have a guitarist standing in front of his amp and he walks around and he tilts his guitar to the point where it's like just starts feeding back without even doing anything, like that's going to give you a crazy sound, and you feel it not only in the performance but like the amp and the guitar like talking to each other. It's kind of crazy. So yeah, I'm going to go more in depth on this stuff in a bit, but I want to I think the schedule is kind of good. So now that we've kind of walked through a lot of things,
just before we get too far from it as well, the one thing just missed, the GMLs.
Oh yeah,
the
GML EQs, or preamps. Those things, I had this engineer, what was his name again? Yeah, anyways, he designed the headphone robots we have. Like he's like this like super like even like super clean. Oh, what's up, Sam? he kind of put me onto this philosophy of like just getting super clean recordings, and like what these are good for is exactly that. So they're transformerless, so basically that means like you're not getting any color added from this, you're just getting the mic in its like purest form, and they're specifically good for like singers. They're specifically good for singers that like have like this nasality or something that like maybe might drive a preamp to the point of like distorting in a certain band, and you don't really want that. So sometimes mics like U87s are kind of infamous for that. Like they'll the mic itself will overdrive when you're like singing into it. So start with the mic. Like maybe the mic's not the best choice, but if you just want like a clean recording, I use this on a lot of Nelly stuff. This is really great. They're just like so reliable. Like you'll get like a nice representation without any extra color, and then you can always do a lot of stuff after. We would do a lot of like comm recordings, and they have like all these super specific specs, and they want just the cleanest recording. They don't want any extra color. So like for voiceover or stuff like that, great choice too. Neves are just like good because they kind of like do the work for you. You know what I mean? But if you just want like a really clean sound, these are really good for that. Actually, a cheat code.
I love using them for DIs and rhythm decks because they have a low noise floor, and again, as Anthony was saying, just very clean.
Yeah. So yeah, now that I've kind of gone through a bunch of stuff, I saved the in-depth patch bay analysis overview for now because I feel like you guys will actually understand what I'm explaining. So you guys want to huddle around here. Get you guys acquainted. So I'll work my way sort of through it. So top is mic lines. So what are the mic lines? Where do those come from?
Mics from the room.
Exactly. So those are coming from the room. Down here, so we have all the outboard gear. So we have 1079s, and then we have the Pultecs underneath them. Then after that, you'll see there's a couple spaces skipped because like those racks are just empty. We have the GML EQ, the 1176, the CL1Bs, Distressor, DPE. What is that again? Anyways, I'll remember. Allen Smarts 1 and 2, the Varimu Manly, the TLA like LA2A style compressor, the Sontec EQs, second set of Allen Smarts, the 769s, which is like this crazy compressor EQ unit, the VAC rack, which is like a tube, it's just giving you, it's like a tube limiter, the what is that, 1580, I don't really, oh, that's the AMS, the RMX, then the H3000, the Rev 5, which is the Yamaha reverb unit. So we kind of put the effects on the last one there. And then in the back, you'll see the EMT 251. That's going to the control or to the machine room. Apogee, that's a clock thing. That's like another interface. Ziffer, that's like super ancient way of patching in phones. And then you have the plate in the back. And then I'm gonna come back to that. Down here, we actually move on to the side rack. So these are the 31104 Neves. So the 31104s are the vintage like George Martin, like Beatles Neves that are like super old and coveted. And then after that, 3 to 8, we have the other side Neves there where we put the drum mics. And then after that, I can't see, what does that say? The 1178, 33104 compressors, and then the 160 compressors. And then just above one of these, you'll see the Avalon DIs are on the outputs of them are there. So those are if you have a guitarist in the room that wants to record a DI directly in, you can just go into one of those Avalons there. And then I'll keep going. So then we have these extra pieces of gear like floating around on top of the desk. So you'll see the APIs, there's a label that says B1 to 5. That is EDAC Tie-Line B. So you'll see it's labeled EDAC and Bulkhead. They're interchangeable. So basically EDAC Tie-Line B, that's the APIs 1 to 5. Then you have the GMLs, which I'm pretty sure are A1 to 4. So that's EDAC A1 to 4 ins and outs. And then I think is it A5 to 8?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the Focusrites are on A5 to 8, which are there. Bulkheads C and D. There used to be other things in here. I don't think they're hooked up to anything right now. This producer desk tie lines, behind the APIs, like on the other side of the H3000 there, like behind the desk, you'll see 12 other XLRs. They have XLR male, female, and quarter inch, and they're all going down the same thing. So if I wanted to plug in a Rhodes directly into there, I'll show you guys how that works. You would use the producer desk tie lines. So the tie lines here are basically other mic lines. So we have extra inputs if you want to actually put instruments in the room. You can hook up the XLRs into there. Okay, and then Pro Tools in, so that's pretty self-explanatory. That's your inputs on Pro Tools. The multi-track returns are the outputs of Pro Tools. That's how we did our headphone mixes. And then we get into this area here. So program is the input of the Lavry. So if you want to the desk is hooked up to the Lavry. So if you're mixing on the desk, you print back through the Lavry. But if you just want to hear your mix just going through the Lavry, you'd go into there. I'll actually show you guys that later. These are a bunch of other 8-track and tape machine things that I don't use anymore, and I don't even know because that's before my time. The Q sends, so left and right, that's your Q. Like we set up the separate headphone mix, the talkback mic, the echo sends. So these are actually these SSL knobs right here, 1 to 4, are hooked up to the Lexicon, and some of them are hooked up to the plate. So if you want to go into the Lexicon, I'll actually show you guys how to do that. That'd be like into 3, 4 here. And then the echo returns, they come out here on these red ones. So if I want to take the output of the Lexicon, go out of there into Pro Tools. What else do we have here? Here we have stereo 1 to 5 replay. So that's all the other things on the center section. So starting with TV, and then iPod, and then disc, then Pro Tools, then Mac. Like if I want to record somebody's iPod into Pro Tools, I would count down from, so TV is 1 and then iPod's 2. So I would take stereo 2 replay, the blue one, and put that into Pro Tools. And you could actually do it the other way. If you want to record something into an iPhone, you could put it into the input of that. So that would be on the bottom here. What else do we have? We have mults. So that's short form for multi. If you put anything into this, it'll split the signal. So it's basically like a Y cable. So if I put one thing into that, I can split it into 2 things. So if I wanted to, let's say I wanted to record like a kick mic with the compressor and without, like somebody was asking, is that tracked into it? Yes, but you can also put the kick mic into there, send one through a compressor, which goes into Pro Tools on one track, which is like the wet kick, and then take the other and go directly into Pro Tools, which will give you like the dry kick. And then a bunch of other stuff that is more tape days that we don't really use. And then up here you have the SSL ins and outs. So you have the channel mic inputs. So if I want to actually use one of these this is all mic pre's. So if I wanted to have 1 million mics, I can also use all these channels. That's the mic inputs. Multi-track returns is the exact same as that. So also the multi-track returns, if you send something out of Pro Tools, it automatically comes up on that fader in the SSL. I'll show you how that works later. Channel line inputs. So if I wanted to record like a line level input into the SSL, or let's say if I'm finished my mix and I want to like sum with the SSL, I pick 8 channels I like on the SSL and then put the stereo drums on one, stereo vocals on the other, into the channel line inputs, and then I could just sum through the board and then print through the Lavry. Channel insert sends and channel insert returns. So basically, if I want to put, if I'm mixing on the console, you'll have your dynamics and EQ, but you can also put plugins or like actual pieces of outboard gear into each channel as inserts. So basically that's where the word insert comes in from Pro Tools. Pro Tools is just a giant SSL, by the way, and a tape machine in one. It's all built around that. So you'd turn that on, and whatever you plug into the insert, return, and send will actually go in line to that channel. So then you take the channel output and put it back into Pro Tools to print. But all that will make a little bit more sense when I talk about hybrid mixing and stuff. And that's kind of it. That's pretty much the whole studio. mapped out in this thing. So I know it kind of is hard to grasp, but hopefully it makes a little bit more sense after going through all that. You guys have questions about this? I know it's a lot. We'll go more in deep later, but yeah.
Is it normal or half normal?
So these are, it depends on which ones they are. Like some of them are normal and some of them are half normal. But typically, I think it's typically half normal. So if you plug something, or no, is it normal? Yeah, when you plug something in, it's still sending signal to her. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you split a signal, do you lose gain on that signal at all?
No.
Or is it doubling it?
It's the same.
Okay.
Yeah. You don't lose any gain. Yeah. Any other questions? Cool. What's next on this thing? Miscellaneous studio equipment. Oh yeah. Okay. Who knows what a DI does?
Converts mic signal into low C signal into a high impedance signal.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So if you have like a guitar, it's like a 1/4-inch cable, but the impedance is different, so it'll be like a lot quieter. It'll be a lot louder if you just plug it into something, and like the impedance won't be quite right, so the signal won't be as exactly how it's intended. So you put it into that, it'll convert it into a mic signal that you can send to another preamp. And then you can also use a DI to record your DI straight from an XLR, and then it has a through knob which will go to your amp. I can actually show you guys one of those in the back, but let's go through the other things. Cable types, mic versus... Actually, let's do this part in the back because I'll show you guys.
Does everyone know what the difference between mic level and line level?
Oh yeah, that's one of
I feel
those
like
things.
That might
Yeah.
help too, yeah.
So basically like a mic, it captures sound, but like really quietly. So like a dynamic mic, the simplest way to explain this is a dynamic mic. Dynamic mic actually takes air waves, and it has like a, basically like a coil, and the air wave pushes like an internal tube into that coil, and that back and forth movement creates a waveform, but it's like this mechanical little thing that's like creating this very tiny waveform, and that's what you use a preamp to basically take that and you boost that signal. So it's basically taking the electricity and amplifying it. That's all it is. And so line level is like your level that you'd actually record into Pro Tools with, or like put through Gear, or like your final master is technically like a mastered line level signal. And then with the line level signal, you can take that and play it off of a phone, or play it off of a PA, or like in the studio in the speaker. If you try to just like record a mic straight into Pro Tools with nothing and then like export it, you'd have to like first like gain it up like 30 dBs to even hear it really.
So like
It'd be
line
like this
levels,
tiny little thing.
line levels loud,
Yeah.
mic levels quiet.
Quiet.
And
Yeah.
usually the ins and outs of any piece of gear, you want to know whether or not it's going to be mic level or line level.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
So like the Neves and other preamps, they can actually take line level signal, and all it is basically it's like gain staging it down. So when you're recording into it, it's kind of like leaving it where it needs to be. So like, for example, on these Neves here, I'll show you here. Anything like line level, you'd be going like, if you wanted to just go through the Neve and get the color of it, whatever you put into it, you'll get out if you leave it at like 0. But if I need a mic, I need to like boost like 40 dBs just to get that mic level to line level. But it actually takes different inputs. I'm not quite sure why. I guess you could use the same input, but yeah, I'm trying to think of why it would be, because it's the same.
Maybe balanced or unbalanced.
Yeah, it might be something like that.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Like, with the more you crank up the preamp,
Yeah.
the more coloration you'll have, or does it stay the same?
Yeah, you'll get more,
Okay.
like the transformer inside it will start to like heat up,
Okay.
and like you'll get more color out of it.
Okay.
And then you can actually overdrive it, like get
Nice.
a lot of color out of it.
Okay.
That's another thing too that's like kind of important to know is like, if you really want like a super colorful sound, you can take the output gain right down and boost the input gain, so you're getting more of the color but like not as much signal, so it won't be
Okay.
clipping all the way into Pro Tools. It'll be basically clipping this thing.
Oh, wow.
And if you just want like a clean signal without as much coloration, the real answer is you use the GML, but like you could just put this output to the max, and so that way you're boosting only as much as you need to get that loud. And then you can always the output gain doesn't stop here. You can also boost it in Pro Tools. So if you want like a super clean signal out of a Neve for whatever reason, you could record really quietly and then just boost the signal afterwards with like a utility or like a gain plugin in Pro Tools.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So yeah, let's go back and see those DIs. Just the JDI. All right. Anybody that's ever done live sound knows what these are. We use them in the studio too. It's a JDI. Typical passive, meaning, I'll let you guys walk in. Passive meaning it's doesn't need any electricity to run. There's like passive and active DIs. The active ones will actually let you boost the gain from the DI. This is just passive, so you just plug your guitar into this. So basically, like that's your high impedance input, I think, as you said, and then take the output of that, which takes it's the exact same impedance level and everything to plug into the amp because the amps are built for high impedance instrument level signal. But then on this side, it shoots out the balanced mic level signal, and this will turn anything into a mic level signal. You could put like a line level thing into this and put it out, kind of like use it as a deep pad switch, but that's not really good because the impedance will be changed afterwards. Like it actually just works on a formula basically based off of like the copper wires inside it to lower the impedance. So if you put a low impedance level in, it'll make it even lower, but also drop the volume for you. But I've had cases where I haven't had a pad or anything to like put on something, and I've used this as a pad, and it didn't really work that well. So not really recommended, but that's kind of how it works. It lowers the signal of things, and also lowers the impedance. And then we have your stereo DIs right here. So exact same thing. Got your high impedance instrument level, and it shoots out your low impedance mic level at the back of that. Probably have some passive ones around, but I'm not sure where they are. And then we have other guitar cables. Volume cable, wah-wah, fuzz, other things. A lot of them are on the floor because we always just jam around and have the pedal board set up if you guys saw in there. And that's pretty much that. You guys, questions? I'm trying to think of like other miscellaneous studio equipment. Like you have your reamp box. So this is what you'd use to reamp guitars. What this does is it takes a line level signal. So like once you've already recorded your DI, and it does the opposite. It converts it back into a high impedance instrument level cable. So then you can plug that into a guitar amp and re-record the sound of your amp with an already recorded guitar take. What else we got here? That's pretty much it for like miscellaneous things. Like, I mean, there's like all sorts of kooky things that I'm probably missing, but for your typical day-to-day thing, like you wouldn't need more than a DI and like a reamp box, and understanding the difference between mic level and line level, and then also understanding like the different cables. So, for example, like a sex changer, this just takes an XLR and makes it so that it has two females. So a use for this is like you'll notice like the panel in the studio is female, so it's meant to receive signal, and like but let's say I want to put like a PA in the room, and I actually want to send signal from Pro Tools back into the live floor. I would take a sex changer and basically go female. I would take a male one. So I take something like this, plug that into this isn't a sex changer. These are the super short XLRs. I'm gonna find one in here. No. Oh wait, these are XLR short. I'm right then. There we go. Okay, so like this is male on both ends. So I would plug this into the panel in the studio, and now if I plug an XLR into this, I get a male output on the other ends. So now I can take signal from the panel and send it out to a speaker because, a PA or something like this on the back of this. Like, well, for example, like a speaker like those. Like if you have like a speaker at home or whatever, you'll notice that they need a male connection to go into it. You can't plug a female into something that's like meant to receive sound. So that's what the sex changers would be for. You have your Bantam to XLR. So like let's say I have a mic in the room. I want to record right into the patch bay. We have the producer desk, like the XLRs behind the producer desk that I'll show you guys after I talked about them. But this, I can take a mic. Well, this is male, so I would need like a female one. Oops. Just grabbing all the male ones. There we go. This would take from the XLR of the mic into this, and I could put it right into the patch bay. Just works to record a mic right in the room. Splitters, pretty self-explanatory. If I need to split a signal or something, XLR, TRS, XLR male to quarter-inch TRS. So let's say the back of your interface is quarter-inch, but I need it to go to an XLR to like patch it into Pro Tools or something. If I have another producer in the room that brings an Apollo or something, I'd use two of these guys. The male to quarter inch are in the other room right now. Oh no, they're right here. So I would take quarter inch to male. So now that makes it able to go into that. Hold on, this is female. It's supposed to be there. That's supposed to be there. What else? XLR male and female to quarter inch. That's the same thing, except this is unbalanced and these are balanced. What else? RCA to XLR. So RCA is like the back of your record player, like very old sort of technology. This used to be what we had before XLRs and stuff. Stuff still uses it. What else? Speaker cables. So speaker cables are meant to take high voltage. They look like a quarter inch, but they're a lot thicker, and this is what you'd plug in a guitar cabinet into a head with. Yeah, you don't want to use a regular quarter inch for that because it'll like catch on fire. MIDI cables, AES digital cables. This is like probably some really old archaic stuff that I don't even know what it is. It looks like an XLR, but it's probably not exactly that. Just straight up RCAs, RCA to quarter inch. So yeah, any other cable that you need for any sort of piece of gear that's old or has different connections, you'd get here. Typically, you just need an XLR or like a quarter inch. We have a box of just patch cables. These are just unbalanced quarter inches. And that's pretty much that. That's where you find those things in the studio. Any questions?
Do you guys use Ethernet or Cat5?
Ethernet we do for like internet stuff.
Okay.
And then also the USB from the USB cable from the computer goes all the way under the ground to connect to the keyboard with the Ethernet cable, Ethernet to USB, just because they're better at transferring over a long distance.
Really long and like became this amalgamation.
1 second.
Cool. We good?
Somebody calling about a session tonight.
Tonight?
Yeah. Any
At
interest?
what time?
He was asking about what time we would be free.
Anytime, I guess.
I mean, I've been working since 8 a.m., so
Yeah.
I'm gonna say no myself.
Yeah.
If you have an interest or Esto,
Esto.
where's Esto? Esto? Is he in the kitchen?
Yeah, go talk to him. Okay. We're like right on time. This is amazing. Okay, so this is like my favorite part is Pro Tools operation. So like the name of the game is just speed. Like shit used to take so long. And it used to be so much more important to be fast, but nowadays it's like arguably more important actually because things can move so quickly, and it's like when an artist has worked with somebody that's super quick and they're used to things like going like spontaneous, like instantaneously. If you're slow, like you won't get the job again. But I'll show you guys. sort of like a basic recording setup. So interleave, prompt, slap some downloads. This is hilarious to me. I'm always like test blah, 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 some random number, and it's like the exact same combination somehow. Like, okay, there we go. Don't save. Let's actually let's load up a template. So I can show you how to import session data actually. So if you go Shift Option I, you can import session data. So that's like Pro Tools, not just audio files, but like actual, you can import any track from another session. So I have my template, and I'm just gonna hit everything, and then here you can choose what you want to import, tempo, key signature, da 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 da. But I'm just gonna default. I just want these tracks. Okay. So this is like my basic Pro Tools setup. Got my record track. So that'll be input 1. Got auto-tune on it. A must. Sometimes, you know, if somebody's actually a good singer, you want to turn that off while they sing so that they're not singing bad on like without knowing it, and then turn it on afterwards. Channel strip. This is just like a gate, so this will just help you get rid of like the kind of like bleed and noise between lines, so that while you're recording, you don't have to worry too much about like editing it out. But then I would obviously edit that stuff out afterwards. I start with it off because I actually want to like, first thing I want to hear is what's my actual sound like. Did I unplug the mic? Oh yeah, it's way turned down right now. It's going in really low for some reason. I'm just going to check something real quick. Input trims are set to A. This is like the input trims. You got A and B. B is loud and A is quiet. That's for whatever reason. You also have like an built-in soft clipper in Pro Tools now, so that's actually really handy because if you never clip, you never really clip. It doesn't sound bad. There we go. So first thing I do is I check, make sure that there's no radio or like some weirdness happening with the signal, and then that's going to my lead aux. So that finger is like singing well before I try to fix their voice, but typically I would always record like with an in the box compressor as well as one out the box, because just one compressor typically is not enough to like catch all the really quiet bits, because like they might be singing super quietly and super loudly in some parts, so this will just help them hear themselves, because they're hearing whatever you're giving them. So I'll put that on, and then might have another compressor, another compressor, like very classic setups like an 1176 into an LA2A. RVox is like just a great modern day compressor. It's like almost like an EQ. It brings out the lows as well. My favorite weapon when it comes to EQ anything, the Pultec. Oftentimes I'll find myself like boosting, cutting a little bit at 20, boosting at 12, and then maybe attenuating even a little bit at 100 to really make that vocal bright and sit in the mix. But again, I wouldn't record with all this stuff on unless I need to, or unless they're like, hey, can you make my voice sound better or something? I'll start saucing it up. Just like a typical EQ, I might be shelving around 4K to 6K, kind of like basically like rather than actually boosting, I will shelve, so that's like cutting out the lows. It's like gives you the same effect. And then I might be taking away some mid-range, some boxiness. And then usually singers have one or two really nasty bits that you might just want to like really kind of scoop out, cut off some lows, cut off some highs. But again, I wouldn't typically record with all this stuff. I used to record with like a million plugins on, and I always just found that it was hard to mix that way because I'm like, I'm not really hearing what I'm recording. Whereas now I'm like really focused on like just hearing it well and recording. It's a little easier with rock because shit's not as poppin' and bright as like pop. So like with pop stuff, if the production's super bright already, there's like really crispy hi-hats, all that stuff, you kind of need to do some extra work to make it sound good. Or you just grab the EQ on your preamp and just commit to a brighter sound right off the bat. I find the less I do with plugins, the more I can do with EQ and compression outside of the box, the more clarity I get, because all of these plugins and stuff add noise, they add jitter, they add aliasing, like all these things that you just don't want. And the more you add, the more you're kind of fighting against all those things as well.
Thinning it out.
Yeah. Valhalla, like a shimmer, lexicon, slap. What else do I have in here? Just basic things. I have a doubler, sort of like I have a couple of parallels set up for my voice or my vocals. I typically leave these off while I'm recording because they will just add too much latency, and then I'll turn them on later. So this is like a fake amp simulator, like a guitar tool rack, just to get like a really kind of like broken up sounding amp distorted parallel thing. And then this chest voice thing is a Pultec, but with all the highs rolled off, and that's it. Basically, it's just like this super muffled sound, but it makes it sound more analog. It makes it like if you have a bad mic or a bad singer or like whatever, super thin sounding, blending that in can go a long way. And then my effects are here in purple. I keep them purple just because it's like a quick reminder that whatever I'm doing here affects these. So I just know that those are my returns. Talkback, headphone, they're grayed out because typically I'll just start with the external studio, so they just hear exactly what I hear, and I don't need to build another headphone mix. You need to know though, if you're doing this, you gotta take these guys out, because otherwise they'll hear two things in their voice. Or actually no, they won't hear anything if those are in. And if you're doing if you're actually building out a mix with out of 3/4 and this is on, they'll hear double. So like it's either this is on and that's off, or that's on and this is on, that's off, or this is off and that's on. Click and then boom. So what do I want to talk about this? Okay, so vocal editing. So when you're recording leads, there's a couple ways to do it. So if you're running into like latency and stuff and you don't want to record through plugins and you don't want to have latency, Pro Tools works better when you monitor right out of 1.2. So that's just like a quick and easy way. You'll need to like copy your effects onto here if you're doing that, because it's not going to be going through any of that. But usually I don't find any trouble doing it through the aux. I'm just sort of monitoring. If the delay computation's above like 120, I start to worry that they're getting that latency. Even if my hardware is set to this is just adding on top of that. So you want to keep this like super low, and that's why I keep these things inactive too. So I'll record through that. So there's a couple of ways that I used to like, I see this so much. I see people have a record track and they will take their vocals and they'll playlist onto this, right? Playlist onto this, and then once they find a good take, then they'll drag it on down. Who can tell me what the problem with that is? Yeah.
Because then, if you want to do a comp, you're not going to be able to remember, or it's not going to be in order essentially of like where all the pieces are. So you want your takes are kind of going to be all over the place.
So I used to end up with like my background vocals, my doubles, everything in this massive like, and I don't say it lightly, massive track where I have 300 playlists on something, and I'll be like searching through it, and I'm soloing that track, going like da, 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 and it's just like such a cumbersome workflow. So if you're doing this, record onto this track, keep this track muted, get on playlist 1, do your record, and only record on that track. And then while they're doing their next take, playlist onto that one. Record. Right? sorry, I'm skipping steps here. Record playlist, right? Record, do it again, playlist. Now, I get a good take, and I open up my playlist view, and everything is kept there. So then, when I move to doubles, and then I would unmute that. When I move to doubles, I'll do the doubles. So this is a great method because I can be, like, let's say they want to record the next line. Now I can put this in input record arm, and they'll always hear me, but also always hear what they did before that, and I don't have to worry about punching in, which I'll explain later. So now I can go like this, and let's say they want to do another take. I'll go like, basically I would have to like cut this, drag it down, duplicate it, and then record again, and then delete it on that playlist. But they can hear themselves going into it now, but they can also go like la 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 la, get their pitch while they're punching in. It's still not a perfect method to me because it's just so many clicks. Like you just saw me have to kind of like unmute and mute and then like take that clip out and delete it. Like it's just a little cumbersome for me. So what I've found with really works with vocals is, let me delete this record track. Let's just make a clean new track. Lead new. I'll start on playlist 1 always. I'll record until they get the take they want, and oftentimes I don't like it when engineers will playlist and then record, because that little millisecond is already interrupting their thought process. If they say go again, spacebar, command spacebar, and then while they're recording, I playlist. Go again. The only problem with that is now your playlist is named 4 when I'm actually on playlist 5. So if I can, I'll playlist and then record. So then when I'm doing, if I have a printout of lyrics, I know this is take number 6, and I can circle through which lines I like, and then playlist that quickly and then record. And now I know this is actually going to save as number 7. So on my lyric sheet, I have, every line of the song, and I'm writing down which take was the best one. And then let's say that then that's okay, but in this scenario I'm like working on line by line, so I wouldn't be doing that. This is sort of a more modern way of doing things where people want to punch things in. A lot of the time with like really talented singers, they'll just want to sing the whole verse, or they'll want to sing the whole song. So I can like let take 7 go, be circling what I liked about it, and then tell them go again, but focus on this part and this part and this part, and be writing things down, and then playlist again. And then afterwards, I'll make a duplicate playlist, call it comp, and then open up my playlists, and then go in and comp from there. So this is a handy trick to know too. So when you open up your playlists, when you're punching in, or when you want to do a comp, Control Option V lets you highlight something and just bump it right up to the top. So I can quickly do my comp and then listen down, like add crossfades, whatever, like fix it up afterwards. Or there's so many ways to do this. I'm just trying to go slow so I don't get too out of myself and skip anything. Another way to do things is with punch-ins. So let's say I go back to playlist 1. Now we're on 9. I'll record something. Let's say we do that line a few times, and then they get it, and now they're like, I want to do the second line. I'll stay on playlist 10, and I'll drop them in where they are actually jumping in. And when I'm doing it this way, I'll always make a duplicate track that's just called listen, because let's say we're like, okay, let me just listen to that quick. While I'm listening to the stuff, I'll put them on input enable, so that when they're playing it back, this record thing, it only monitors them when you're actually hit record. If you haven't hit record, you won't be able to hear them if they're like, no, stop. That's why I have this listen thing. It's just like so that I always have a channel open to them. And then basically after I'm done that, I will punch them in there. Now, let's say they fuck up here, and I want to do that again. In this case, what you do is you do duplicate playlist. So now I'm duplicating that whole thing, but I'm still keeping this take, but now I'm going to write over it, same punch-in spot. So then I end up with a new playlist there. And now let's say we go to the next line. Punch in. Stop. I'm like, okay, do that again. Punch in. And I end up with a bunch of different... I'm going to make a comp new. I end up with a bunch of different stuff here, but you'll see as I keep recording, it's keeping all the takes. This is all junk. Like, obviously, this is the only actual real take of that. All the other ones are duplicate. This is all junk, but you see how I'm still keeping everything as I'm punching in. So that's, like, my personal favorite way to do it. The only problem is, if they're trying to get their note or go, like, la, 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 before they punch in, they can't hear themselves if both their headphones on or on. So oftentimes, to, like, make it easier, I'll just say, if you want to hear yourself before you come in, just take one headphone off, and that solves all your problems. With backgrounds, it's a little bit different because, like, with backgrounds, I find it just usually easier to just make 6 background tracks, and then this BG track is just my record volume or my record track. Because with lead tracks, your fader's at 0. You want to hear them loud, but with backgrounds, oftentimes, like, let's say this is my left and right of a stack, I'll turn this way down, and I don't want to record onto these tracks because they won't be able to hear themselves. It'll sound great to me because I'm like, it's in the mix how I want it to sound, but I'm not going to get a good performance because they can't even hear themselves. So I'll record onto one track that's at 0, or I can boost it 12, or like whatever they need if they can't hear themselves. And then I'll have all these by default muted. And then as I'm recording my stack or whatever, if they're like, I'm like, no, do it again, I can drag it down, playlist, do it again, drag it down, playlist, do it again, drag it down. Oops. See, I'm doing all, and see if you record over something, that clip is still there. You can drag it down, playlist, and then duplicate it, make a BG comp track, and now I have all my backgrounds of that specific harmony still playlisted there, and when I play it back, it'll be at -13 or wherever I set it at, so they can hear themselves while they record, but it's also in the mix later when I'm actually comping it. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And then same thing for, like, if that's like one harmony, like a third up or whatever, we do the same thing for the next one, right?
A little tip about playlisting as well, just to help keep your life a little bit more organized, is if you, whatever track you're playlisting onto, if you end, like BG, if you go BG take dot, like period 01, it will then, like, that'll be your first take, and every time you make a new playlist, Pro Tools will automatically be like take dot 02,
Exactly.
03, 04, so everything is lined up. So if you start your playlist track with that labeling, it's going to help everything.
Before you hit record, though, if you like what I was explaining on the lead, like if I hit, like let's say I'm on take 12, and I hit record, and then I go on to 13, it's going to save it as 12. So later on when I'm comping, number 12 is going to be on number 13. So when I'm looking at them like this, it's not going to line up like I want it to. You know what I mean? So it's important to hit the new playlist before you hit record. I know I kind of said I don't like that. Sometimes you're working so fast it doesn't matter. You're just going to listen through the takes later, and it's like in those cases you're not really doing a lyric sheet or whatever. But it's like if they're singing the whole song down or like verse by verse, they're going to need a second to go, like, to catch their breath or whatever. In that second, you can take a new playlist and make it. You know what I mean? That's pretty basic vocal editing. What other vocal things? Bread and butter shortcuts you'll see in that group chat, like trim, like around an area. Cut with A and S to trim around things. D and G to add your fades. Or like, let's say I have a bunch of different comps. A quick F is going to give you your fades in between them. That's pretty basic editing stuff. Clip gain. You don't need to open up this window and go here. That's how old guys do it. You just hit this, Control Shift, and then up and down will do the volume for you. I know you can't see anything, but it's actually doing something. Or if you go Control Shift minus, you can really get granular and just make a line. Like if they tail out too quietly, you can just fix the tail of a thing, or if they come in too soft, you can just kind of fix the tail or the head like that. Or like if there's like a little S in the song or something like that, you can just make a new clip and turn it down. With this, a good thing to note is if I just highlight the track and go down, see how that disappeared? So now I have my overall control of things here still, but now it has this little triangle beside it because it's like the trim volume of the clip. But sometimes I like to see what I've done like visually, so I'll pull these up. So I always kind of, and also actually no, the real reason is because if I make an S like that, go down, like let's say that's an S and I want to like de-S it manually. If I make a cut first, like just Command E it, I can add fades really quickly like that. I know it's really small because I'm like super zoomed in, but let's pretend these fades are like 1 millisecond for now. So I can actually add fades like that, where if I did it like this, there's no fade. It's going right down to that volume, and I can't highlight it after that and F it. You know what I mean? So that's a quick thing, like always add the cuts first and then reduce your S's, just because it's way easier to de-S like that and then add a fade rather than having to like add extra dots, you know, to mimic a sort of fade in and fade out. I can just go boom, 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 highlight. Super quick like that. You guys following?
Yeah.
So another thing that I like to do a lot is like do effects returns and stuff like on the fly. So let's say I'm like mixing. I like to live in this window, by the way. I hardly ever go to this window. If I like, let's say I decide, I want to add a microshift or something. If you go to the output of your track, and I go to new track, I can just label it microshift, and it's already selected stereo aux input. So now the send pops up and this new track comes underneath. I'll make this purple. I'll drag it to my effects returns at the bottom. I'll slap my micro shift on it. Oops, I kind of fucked up. I grabbed this track at the same time. Let's make that go back up here. And now I have my micro shift already made. So like, that's way faster than going create a new track, stereo aux, micro shift, and then label, where is it? Put the input to like bus something, go over here, create a new thing, go to bus 2324, then rename it. Like it's already named it for me too. It just names it the name of the track. Micro shift. I can't spell. You got it. New. Like that. See how many steps that was versus just going that, new track, micro shift, new. Boom. It's already labeled the bus for me. It's created a stereo audio track. It's brought up the fader for me. Like it's all instantaneous. So that's another like really nice thing to do. Also, you can do that for a lot of things. Like let's say I want all these BGs to go to a separate aux before it even goes to that. And grab these, go to the output, new track, and maybe these are like the BG verbs, and I just want like a verb right on the track or something like sacrilege like that. Valhalla, grab that, close it, go to BG A. Now I've created that. So I'm like just speeding the workflow up like that, and like a lot of the times like mixing on the fly is what's going to make your record sound great, because if you're being creative and you're fixing things and hearing things in the mix and people are like that, if you're like, oh don't worry, I'll handle that in the mix, it's like you're not doing your job. Like you shouldn't have to remix things after it's done. Like 90% of the record should be like mixed and sounding the way it is in the recording phase, like in the production phase. So you're just really just balancing out, doing some automation, like still being creative in the mix, but doing a lot of your reverb throws and all that stuff early on. Another thing you might want to do is like with aux tracks, like let's say I have a C harmony. I try to like keep all my different harmonies on their own aux, just because if they're all hitting that compressor at once, I don't really have the flexibility to turn one up or the other, because it's like hitting the compressor, so it's only giving me so much give. So if I want to make like another BG track, for example, I'll duplicate it, call this BGC aux. I'll remove the input, and this is, you gotta go like this. So if you gotta take those BGs, like let's say these are my BGCs. Well, let's say actually it's just these two, right? If I go to track and I select a track, where's BGC? If I select this track right now that doesn't have an input, because I deleted it here, but I route this to that track, I'm holding Shift Option and routing it, it's going to name the bus whatever the name of the track is. So now I've created a new aux that's just a duplicate of something else, and it's called BGC aux. See what I mean? So I don't have to create a new bus, rename it or whatever. I just make this no input, then route those things through. I just found that out one day and it was just like saving it.
Can you also, you can also just do route to track, like below the buses, and then if you route it to track, and then you pick the track, I think it will also rename it.
That's what I did, yeah. So I just routed these two to
like
a new
without turning off the input.
But the thing is then, like this was still on BGB.
Oh.
So yes, then in that case, it would just route it. Both of these things would be the same thing.
Right. When duplicating it from the BG. I see.
Yeah. So BGC. Another thing, mix groups. So you have your groups in Pro Tools that let you edit. Like let's say I want these two to be on a group, BGC. So that lets me like group the faders, not the pans, weirdly enough, the solo and the mutes, and then also the edits of it. Just consolidate. So I can move and I can time and I can add fades onto two tracks or delete the silence or whatever. That's all great. That's pretty easy. But let's say I want to group things like plugins. So this something that's really handy for is Auto-Tune. So I have this default Vox tracks group, and you'll see if I go, it's not the globals, so it won't be these settings. It'll be the attributes when you turn this off. And I've made every plugin control and bypass grouped. So now, if I change the Auto-Tune on my lead track, it'll lock it in for the BGs. So like, I see this a lot. You don't need to do that. You just make a group, set your Auto-Tune, and of course you can like turn the Auto-Tune off on the leads and set the Auto-Tune different speeds and all that stuff. In order to do that, all you got to do is just turn your groups off with Shift Command G, and then it's not affecting the other one anymore. See? Cool. Another thing that I learned recently with groups and stuff. Let's say I've made a group. For example, my drum group. So let's say I have like, let's pretend these are like, this is a kick and a snare. But let's pretend this is like my drum kit right here for a second. So I'm going to make a group called drums. This is great for recording, because now I should actually turn off these other groups because I don't know what they're doing right now. This is great for, where'd it go? There it is. This is great for doing takes, because now all my takes are numbered the same if I'm doing like a multi-track record. I'm going to get into that next, but let's say I want to like adjust the level of my drum kit, but not overall. A quicker way to, instead of deactivating your groups with Shift Command G and turning them on, if you just hold, if you leave the group on but hold Control, it turns the groups off. So I can adjust that fader and it's not adjusting anything else. Right? As soon as I turn off Control, it's hitting all of those. Do you see that? You guys see that, right? Yep. Same thing with solo. Like let's say I just want to like turn all the mutes off. Let's say I don't want to just solo all the drums. I just want to hear just the quick, but I have all my groups and stuff going on. Just hit Control S. Makes sense, right? The control group thing is like such a hack. I love that trick. Let me think. Okay, we're a little behind now, but it's okay. So I want to talk about vocal production. So Who here is a singer? Who's a singer? What's up, Ish?
Hey, you want to throw this on real quick?